right. So Carson's here to talk about Drupal, and I think hopefully give us an overline idea of where we're going with Drupal as the campus and what the goals are and how you can get started.
Yeah, and more specifically, we had kind of originally talked about doing Drupal theming and kind of getting into that, but it seemed like what was probably a little bit more useful would be to kind of talk a little bit more about, also just sort of up front, talk about kind of just Drupal in general, just in case there are any folks in here who've just never seen it before. And by the way, how many people here haven't seen Drupal before? And it's okay if you haven't. Yeah. So yeah, we can kind of take a look and get a quick overview of kind of what's going on there, and then also give you a little bit of an overview as far as what we're doing with Drupal to kind of make it a little bit more accessible and get started with it a little easier from the web services, the IT's sort of side of things, and I'll kind of we'll give some demos and some stuff here that's like that, and then we'll get into some theming stuff, because really that's it ends up being kind of where most people find that they get the most bang for their buck when they're saying, yeah, but I'm a special snowflake, I can't just fit into whatever mold you've built for me already. That being said, Drupal's super flexible. So let's kind of get into it here. So why Drupal? Why would you use this? Well, first of all, let's just talk about what Drupal is. It's a content management system, and really it's more like a content management framework. It's sort of a nice cross between a development framework. Anybody familiar with those kinds of things, like say Symfony, or well, there's a lot of them, Ruby on Rails, that kind of stuff. Those are frameworks. But what Drupal does is it sort of takes a framework and layers a content management system over the top of that. And so it's really flexible and very efficient at what it does. So basically, great code, greater community. That's an open source project. That's really important to note. You can go in, you can see all of the code that is running your site. You can contribute code to the project, and you can help make it better. And there are tens of thousands of developers who are constantly looking at this code, making it better, improving it. And there's a ton of, and again, tens of thousands of modules that exist, which are essentially, you probably heard the word plugins or something like that. Drupal, they call them modules, that extend the functionality of the core Drupal system to make it better, and that's all contributed by the community. And it's a really great community, very active, lots of camps, local user groups, huge conferences, the whole thing, and they're all just, everybody I've met, for the most part, is just, they're all just top notch and really great developers. I was at a conference in 2001, I think, called ApacheCon, and it was like a meeting of all of the people who built PHP and MySQL and those kind of folks, and Apache web server, all that kind of stuff. And I remember Tim O'Reilly was speaking at the conference, and one thing I remember from that whole thing, besides meeting Rasmus Leerdorf, who's my hero, he was the guy who created PHP. That's a weird hero to have. But Tim O'Reilly said, follow the alpha geeks. That was his sort of message to all of us, and that was to tell us to, like, hey, follow those super nerdy guys, the guys that get made fun of, and the guys who are in their mom's basements or whatever it might be. But those guys are the real innovators. Those guys are the real guys who are really making things happen. That's where a lot of these things sort of come from. Drupal came from a Danish kid's, dorm room. So that's where it was initially built. And he's a genius. So anyway, he's an alpha geek, and there's a ton of other alpha geeks, and they're all working on Drupal. So I'm going to follow them. Drupal's incredibly extensible. There's built into the system a way for you to kind of hook in and modify things all along the sort of stack, the bootstrap of getting into running a Drupal site you're going through. You can hook in there in all those different places and change things, modify stuff, do whatever you need to do to make it fit what you need it to do. And so it's really extensible. It's a really great system for doing it. There's a learning curve, of course, to learning that part of it, but that's going to be a learning curve with anything you use. It's super flexible. There are tons of e-commerce websites using Drupal, like very sort of complex e-commerce sites using Drupal. There are simple blogs. There are simple brochureware style sites using it. There are crazy workflow systems built around Drupal that are being used. All kinds of stuff. So yeah, super flexible. It handles complex data structures really well. So part of what happens with most websites is that the data that's in your website, pretty unstructured, and a lot of systems still don't have this solved. And certainly from a framework perspective, you would have to go in and build in whatever that structure is. Drupal kind of gives you some help. They have a thing called content types, and there are fields that you can put on those content types, and you can start to really structure your data and bring a little bit of order to a lot of what happens with chaos around websites, and that's just going to help you down the road. That's what helps it remain a flexible, extensible system. And so it's just really highly flexible or highly functional. I would say it's a less complex code base, but that's sort of something they say. But it's complex, but not really. It's easy to learn, and there's been enough layers put in there to help you sort of break through that complexity. So let's just kind of take a look real quick of what Drupal's out-of-the-box experience is like. We're just going to install it from the start. We're going to pretend you have a web server set up here with a MySQL database. You go in. This is like the installation profile that's being run, and we'll get into what that means in a second. But basically, you can see it's running and installing stuff, dependent modules, things like that. We put in our database username and all that kind of stuff. This is just some general sort of site information. This is sped up a little bit from what it normally does, but it's not too far off. You can see you can put in the administrative account, its password, email address, all that stuff. It's done. There's Drupal. You got it. Congratulations. You have a new website. Built into this, it's kind of unclear what to do. Okay, maybe I'm going to add content. Okay, it comes with article and basic page. You can see, you've got like a title and a body that you can put in there. It's not super structured, but oh well, it's an article. Then you've got things like all this configuration and this structure settings and some appearance stuff like, oh, okay, looks like I can do some stuff with themes. But, you can create content types, do things like that. It's a little hard to figure out like, I pretend I want to do a blog with this. How do I make a list of things here? How do I do fancy layouts? How do I do, you start to this automatically starts sprouting a lot of questions. And I've worked with a lot of people who are new to Drupal, and they are frequently confused. After that whole installation process, it's nice, it kind of takes you through. If you know a little bit about websites and that you need a database, that you're gonna run because this is a dynamic website, you go, okay, I know I'm gonna need that. Okay, I know how to put my password in and stuff like that. But it's a little bit like, then it just drops you off. It's like a bus that, you got on and you expected to go somewhere, and it kind of took you to the bus stop right before the stop you were supposed to get off. And now you got to kind of, figure out the rest of the way. Now, luckily, we've got Google Maps now, but let's pretend. What's a better way of doing this? Well, one of the ways of doing this is to sort of like apply what frequently gets called like awesome sauce, to something. Like, let's put all the cool stuff in there and help people out a little bit and put some fancy things in that kind of help you a little bit. So what we're doing in our department is we're building a really great, and we've actually already built a distribution. You can use it right now if you get access to our Pantheon system. It's more of a developer style installation profile, or what's called the distribution. But basically what a distribution is you just package up a lot of configuration and a lot of the modules you might need in order to kind of take you to that next bus stop, right? So basically, we've done that, but we're taking it a step further because we realize that there are people who distribution could probably get you halfway to that next bus stop, but you're still going to need some help, right? So this thing that we're building now, and it's not done yet, it's far from being done, but it's mostly being built, and the person you can blame is the guy who just walked in, Mark Miller. But basically what this is going to be is this is going to be part of a platform that we're going to launch that people are going to be able to use, and there's still some business rules and models around how that's going to get worked out, but it's being worked out. And so this thing is the kind of thing that's going to be on there. And like I said, still early days, but we wanted to give you a little preview of where it's going, and I'll have a little discussion about kind of what to expect from this in the future. So we're just going to kind of go through a little demo here of the installation. Now this looks, boy, surprisingly familiar to you seeing that last demo, but you can see this is installing like 108 things instead of 25, and we're calling this thing Site Farm. So UC Davis kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so still sort of building on what you saw before with Drupal, that kind of stuff. And there will be more to this that's coming that will be done a little bit, doing a little bit more guiding. I'm going to stop this really quick. It's going to do a little bit more to kind of help guide you through that installation process and pick out the kinds of things you want to do with this site. So you're saying, well, I want to be able to build a blog, or I want to do something like that. And so we can kind of help guide you through some of the setup already for you to kind of give you that functionality right out of the box. So we're working on that. Let me start here. So you can see already out of the box, we've got a little bit more of layout happening. We've got some real content here that makes sense to us, what might be going on. Things are responsive where they weren't really responsive out of the box before. This has a thing called a theme switcher, and it works with the sort of marketing standards that we have here on campus. The theme follows the standards. So you get a UC Davis friendly theme out of the box, which is very helpful and could reduce the amount of work you have to do by a lot in order to get yourself to that point. And we're going to talk about theming a little bit more in depth, but because there are still places where the UC Davis theme isn't applicable, and many places where that's not the case. But nonetheless, you've got something there to work with. You've got something that you can actually even sort of take and just sub-theme from there and kind of expand upon. There's a lot of cool stuff, little extra things that don't come out of the box with Drupal normally. The theme switcher. So you can see here that this theme has a special little settings thing that we have up here. We're just changing color schemes that just work real nice with the theme. We can get in here and we can start to mess with, right from here, we're doing the logo and the site name, and we're changing out the header image, whether we want the header image or not, whether we're using light text on a dark background, things like that, whether the search form shows up. We've got various layout tools pre-built into here. So we're saying, hold on, let me get my mouse out of the way there because I wanted you to see what happened right there. So these tools are sort of enabled by a really great set of modules around a module called panels. And basically, this is all pre-built in for you, where you can change your layouts and go ahead and move things around real easily, change how that page lays out. By the way, all those layouts are responsive layouts. You can see we're moving the content around by just dragging it and dropping it into the right places. There's a way to just easily, quickly build a list of say, news articles based on the content type called content page, how many items we want to do. We've got sort order. We've got how we're going to set these fields up. Real quick and easy ways of like building great, easy to use lists, plopping them right into your layout, and then being able to move them around at will. And using those things across other parts of your site as well. So you can see how he's just moving stuff around. There are some settings here for style, so we can apply styles to just those little boxes and do stuff like that. We've got some stuff around adding content, and this is still, you know, sort of straightforward style, Drupal style content stuff. You see we kind of fixed it up a little bit here for you. We've got some extra things in here as far as doing your linking and making it obvious how to do that. We've got like a featured image that you can put on this piece of content. So we kind of built that right in, a way to just add images. A really cool thing that gives us the ability to kind of crop this image if we need to on the fly. So you just crop that image out, give you a different sort of look of that, and it'll show the image in that way. You can see all the menu options, publishing options, authoring stuff. All that stuff has been more exposed a little better than kind of the way it was out of the box with Drupal. It's there in Drupal, but a little bit hidden. This is a way for us to just really quickly and easily add something to the menu. So you've got a menu of links across the top of your site. How do you get stuff, you know, linked there? Well, very easy way to do that. So a lot of this is you know, still just Drupal out of the box. It's just we kind of, you know, made it a little more approachable. So what we're doing now is we're editing a page with the WYSIWYG. So we've got a really nice WYSIWYG set up in here based off of CK Editor, and a lot of cool styles that we can apply. And it makes, you know, like legit markup, not a bunch of garbage like a lot of these WYSIWYGs do. And there's even more coming around the styles that are available here too to expose a lot of bootstrap type stuff. You saw they're also able to kind of just embed some media if you want to, things like that. So so basically, like, say, all right, I make a list of things. I'm going to take that list and turn it into one of those cool little accordion deals. There'll be a way to just apply the style to that. It's going to use Bootstrap's accordion classes, and boom, you got an accordion. So really cool stuff like that. So you can see that there's also another thing for revisions, and that's exposed and very obvious kind of what goes on here. You can revert to previous versions of a piece of content. You can go in, and when you create a new revision of a piece of content, you can say, hey, this content, you know, you can put a little message to yourself, why you changed this, what was changed. And so there's real quick and easy ways for you to go in and do that as well. So that's just a little quick demo of kind of some of the cool stuff that could be done with Drupal. And it's been a little bit of work, you know, that we had to put into that. But a lot of this happens on the theme layer, right? A lot of that kind of stuff happens, you know, on that side. And then there's a bunch of like different modules and all that kind of stuff. And part of the issue that you run into when you're fairly new to Drupal is that you kind of run into a thing where you're like, hey, I don't know how to get the kind of functionality I want. I want to get that cool layout tool and be able to pick different layouts and do that kind of stuff and move things around. How do I do that? Guess what? It's like 8 different modules. And the name of the module is called panels. Like you'd be able to guess that the word panels means layout, right? So that's, you know, it's not obvious, right? So there are some things, you know, out there because of the way people have named things. I want a list of stuff. Well, what would you name something if you said, I want to give myself the ability to make a list of things that are in my website? What would you call it?
List.
That seems obvious, but it's not the name of the thing. It's called views. Okay, that's how you make this. All right, so so anyway, you get some things like that, but you can learn those things from nice people like me. I'll be more than happy to tell you lists means views. Part of what we're doing here is what's called a distribution. And distribution, we already talked about real quick there, was just that we kind of have compiled a lot of cool things together and made them work right out of the box for you, with little to no work on your part as far as configuring all of that stuff. Some experts have done this for you. Now, we're basing our distribution on another distribution, the one that's represented by this weird black thing, and that's called Panoply. And so you can actually make a distribution from a distribution. So you can take all the cool stuff that that thing did, and you can layer your cool stuff on top of that, which is really neat. And it also demonstrates just how flexible Drupal is and how powerful it is. There are 901 distributions on Drupal.org. So if you want to learn anything about Drupal, you go to Drupal.org. That's the main site for Drupal. And you can look us up and see all the distributions that are out there. You can download them, you can install them, and you can play around with them and see what they do. And you can kind of go to school a little bit on kind of how they set things up and how do they put these cool little pieces together and make it work. Another thing you'll notice about a lot of these distributions, they come with really gorgeous themes and for them. The Open Public one is one I always like to point out there. And Atrium's also quite nice. So very nice stuff that people have done. But a lot of these are just sort of built around use cases, right? So they're around a particular use case. So for example, you've got Drupal over there, which is a strangely named thing, but it was built by Germans. So, so basically, Drupal, which is the way they say it, is sort of a client management and a way to kind of do like invoicing and keeping track of time and all of that kind of stuff, all built on Drupal. Open Public is several senatorial congressional offices run their websites from using the Open Public distribution. It's sort of meant for that. It looks like that. They have a red-based theme and a blue-based theme, that kind of stuff. So yeah, a bunch of cool things here. The one down there is called, there's one over there called Open Enterprise. Has a ton of cool little apps that are in there. And that apps thing is something that we're exploring doing with our distribution as well. Basically what apps are is a way to kind of tie some features all together and a little bit of configuration so that when you first install this thing, you don't have to install all of the features, all of the possible things. But if you want to turn something on, you can, and we can make it real easy by you just going to the apps page, go in there, find the app that you want, click install, and it installs like a regular app. Might have a little form for you to fill out some specific configuration for your site, but it's a great way for us to extend the functionality of these things without having it all installed all at once and you going, I don't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't want that. Now you can start to say, I want that, and you can get it. Now, all of these things, like I said, are use case specific type of stuff. And they're sort of built in a particular way with an opinion. And our distribution is no different, except for that we know that the use case here is, sort of varied, right? Which is where a lot of those apps and those kinds of things come in. And so you're saying, yeah, but I don't want that UC Davis, thing. I don't want this, I don't want things to work like that. Or I need this and I need that thing, whatever. What you generally find with Drupal stuff, once you've got a really great flexible base of sort of functionality built into the site. So for example, there's really cool layouts that I showed you and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a lot of cool little widgets and things like that that are going to come with the distribution that basically, allow you to do even neater things with, say, a video player, right? Or with like a video player with playlists, or a little spotlight thing that you put some images in, and it does a little rotating thing, and you put that in the corner, in one of your sidebars, and it's showing a little gallery, or photo galleries, or a list of things, stuff like that. You've kind of got all of that. So what you'll find is you can actually use all of that stuff we've done already to kind of get what you want as far as just the output, but then it's like, yeah, but it's got to look a little different. It's just got to be a little different thing. So what we found, or at least what I've seen, is that Drupal's theme layer comes into play here. And it can go a long way to kind of helping you get what you want from Drupal. And so we'll dive a little deeper into Drupal's theme layer. This is by no means a Drupal theme layer training. I just want to let you know. Because as you'll see, there is a lot to it. There's a lot to it for a reason. So Drupal's theme layer is run by a thing called PHP template. And that is the templating engine, basically, that's installed with Drupal when you install Drupal. And this is the thing that allows you to do dynamic templating with Drupal. It's sort of the motor behind the whole thing. Drupal's theme layer has HTML. Is that a huge surprise? No. You can put your CSS there. So this, you can change all of your CSS, override any CSS that currently exists, change any of the HTML that's being output from the system. Sounds flexible. JavaScript stuff, start adding that kind of stuff in. You can include that. You can mess with things with JavaScript. Theme-specific images, so things that your theme would need, an image that your theme would need to kind of, you know, make it look right if you have some sort of background image or something like that, or something for your menus or background, things like that, if you're using images for that. So those can ship with that. Drupal has its own way of handling images when we're talking about just like, hey, I want to put up a picture of something. It uses the file system for that. So that's a separate thing from your theme. That's content, not theme. That's kind of what happens in Drupal's theme layer. This is what Drupal's theme layer takes care of. Themes, you can find themes on Drupal.org that are open source themes, and there are many. If you just go to Drupal.org project theme, or just go to Drupal.org and you'll see there's a little link over the side that says themes. You click on that, it just shows you the list of all the themes people have contributed. And you can go to school on those. Again, it's open source. You can go take a look and see what somebody else did with their theme and how they got the results that they got. So it's an easy way for you to kind of start to understand, oh yeah, this is how I might do something special. I'm just telling you here, if you look on Drupal.org, you'll see this little box after you go to this page, if you go to the themes page, and you can set that core compatibility to 7. Drupal 7 is the current version of Drupal that everybody should be using. If you're starting with Drupal, I know you might have heard of Drupal 8, and it's coming, and everybody's all excited, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but not right now. Don't use Drupal 8. Drupal 7. And when's Drupal 8 going to be done? When's Drupal 8 going to be done, Sean?
It's done.
Oh, okay. So what you do is you set that core compatibility thing to Drupal 7x. That's going to tell you all of the themes that are compatible with Drupal 7's theming engine. There's 627 themes that are available for Drupal 7 sites. That's a lot. You can, and many of those are garbage. You know what I mean? And you're going to go, that's garbage. But if you go to the ones that are most installed, you actually find, you know, and there's a way to sort of do that. You can sort by most installed, just like I had picked there. Basically, that will give you the most popular ones, and there's a reason why they're the most popular. It's because they're the most flexible, the best, and you know, have a lot of cool stuff going on. You can actually try out themes, and you can try out Drupal, and you can try out any one of Drupal's modules or any one of Drupal's distributions by going to this website, simplytest.me. So if you want to, there's like something blurry right here that says adminable theme, and I want to try out the adminable theme, which is a special theme for admin, for the admin side of the website of Drupal. I can go here, I can type that in, I can then pick which version of that theme I want to check out. I click Launch Sandbox. This thing launches like a cool little sandbox that'll last for about 25 minutes, something like that. And you can sit there and play around with it, see what it looks like, see how it works right out of the box. You can do that with any of Drupal's modules. You just type in a Drupal module, pick the one you want, launch the sandbox. It'll install a Drupal for you. It will install that module for you, and you'll be able to log right in and start playing around that module, see how it works. And you can do that with Drupal itself, Drupal core. You can pick any one of the distributions. And you can even pick Drupal 8 if you want to go look at beta versions now of Drupal 8. You can go take a look at that too if you want to see what Drupal 8 works like, without having to worry about, oh yeah, I need PHP 5.4 on my local machine so I can run local, blah, blah, blah. Don't have to do that. So you can test out themes. You can you buy a theme? You know, that's a question that comes up. Can I just go out and buy a theme and install it? Kinda. The problem sort of there is that generally a lot of the way some people have been doing these sort of purchasable themes, they sort of require you to kind of just do a Drupal install with their theme there. Kind of, I don't know if you guys have ever messed around with Joomla. Joomla does this a lot with their sort of pre-purchased themes. It's like you have to get the theme and you have to install it, but wait, I already have Drupal installed. I just want to slap my theme over the top. Can't I just do that? Because a lot of these people, the way they do things is sort of wrong. So be a little weary of those sites where you've got people who are selling themes. It can be done, and it's just that you have to, it's helpful to kind of know something about theming ahead of time so you can kind of like rip out the pieces you need and apply that to a theme and make that work. I don't know, Mark, do you know of any really good ones right now that are really just killing it? Nope. See, so the other thing I want to kind of point out to you is there is a theme out there that's called Theme, and it's made by these cool dudes named Kalamuna, have a business down in the East Bay, and they built this theme that's based off of Bootstrap. There's other Bootstrap-based themes, and in fact, our distribution uses one called Radix. And we just extend that theme, and so it's Bootstrap based. And you can use Bootswatch, which is like a thing where you can get a bunch of free Bootstrap based templates, but those are not Drupal specific; they're Bootstrap specific. So it has a way though built right into it to just pick one of those Bootswatch themes and apply it, and it will make a child theme off of its theme that has that theme applied to it, Bootstrap theme. So pretty fancy. And then wrap Bootstrap, you know, one step further with the whole Bootstrap thing. But again, that particular one also still takes some work. It's one of those ones where you have to go in, and not everybody who puts up their little themes on the Bootstrap stuff is setting it up to just play nice with Drupal, because why would they? You know, it's just HTML and stuff. So you got to go through, sift through and find the right files to apply in that case. But other Bootstrap type themes kind of do this sort of thing, or just they all play nice with the Bootstrap stuff. And Bootstrap is clearly not the only CSS framework out there, and there are many of those, and there are many themes that work nicely with those. The thing that happens with a lot of these CSS frameworks is they require you to have your HTML be output in a particular way. And Drupal may not be doing that by default. It may not be just sort of automatically dumping out the HTML that you desire. So you need to override that. You need to change what the structure of that HTML is. These themes out of the box start to help you play nice with some of those frameworks by giving you the right HTML. So let's just talk a little bit more about kind of how themes are built and what's involved in like making a theme. So theme files, you go into sites all themes. So there's a structure to Drupal. It has all of its code in there, its core code, and there's a little directory, sites all, and you can create one called themes, a directory called themes. That's where you put your themes. And we're going to talk about some no-nos around the other place where you might see themes in a minute. But basically, if you want to create a theme, a .info file. So you create a file called whatever the name is of your theme, example, right? And you call it example.info. And so that info file, you take that, you stick it in a directory called example in sites all themes. If you go to your Drupal appearance page, you'll see a theme available for you to turn on called example. Now, will it do anything? Probably not. It'll do something. It'll give you some output, but it's pretty much kind of straight what Drupal does. But basically, that's all you need. there are files called tpl.php. You see these here, these tpl.php files. A lot of people call those tipple-fips because they're trying to be cute. So what happens inside the tipple-fip is those contain HTML, and it also contains some PHP inside of it to output the variables that have been set that are being passed into those files to kind of put the content that you want, the dynamic stuff, inside the HTML that you want. And you can see here that we've got some sort of structure to this too, right? You can see there's like HTML, TPL, page, region, block, node. Individual pieces of content in Drupal are called nodes. Sort of a weird naming thing, but that's what it is. So then we've got this thing called template.php. Template.php gives us a way to modify the variables that are being stuck into those templates. So now we can mess around with what those variables are, what they contain. We can mess around with, say, if you see that the variables, some of the variables that are being output are actually CSS classes, gives us a chance to go in and modify and change what CSS classes might be getting applied in a particular spot in the template file. Theme settings.php. Now these are all, again, these are all optional. You know, this tpl.php, we're going to talk about this in a second, but it's basically, if you put one of these in here, based upon the way things are named, this uses naming conventions to kind of do this, you're overwriting what Drupal is putting out by default in those things, because Drupal already has all of those particular template files. Theme settings.php, this is a way for you to make special things happen with your theme and put like special settings when you go into the settings part and you get, I'm gonna pick my theme, there's a little link there that says settings, and generally, you know, they're kind of all the same, but you can modify and add to what settings happen with your theme. So if your theme needs special settings or setup, you can go in and you can create cool little forms and stuff to kind of help make that setup better. Then, of course, you've got all your CSS, your JavaScript, your images, all of that stuff there. And again, this all belongs in Sites All Themes. You can sub-theme a theme. So you can take a theme that exists already, right? And you put your stuff in Sites All Themes, so you put that theme in there. And then in your .info file, the .info file that you have, you put a little setting in there that says base theme equals whatever the name of the theme is that you want to extend, say Calatheme. And now all of a sudden, your theme inherits everything from that parent theme. So you get all of their CSS, all of their JavaScript, all their template files, all their template.php functions that they put in there, all their modifications, that kind of stuff. The screenshots, the logo, the favicon that comes with it. A screenshot is I didn't really cover that, but basically that's a way, that's just a little sort of, remember we kind of saw that appearance page briefly there where it showed on the themes, we saw those little screenshots of them. You can put your own screenshot to make it look cool. The logo in this case actually isn't the site's logo, this is the logo for the theme, and that's for when you contribute this to Drupal.org, you can have a little logo, that's all. What it won't inherit is inside of that .info file, we can set up custom regions. So if we didn't have that cool panels layout thing, we could use theming in order to create special regions on pages or on nodes. And then we can take those regions and we can start putting stuff into those regions. Using like, there's a thing called the block system. And then it doesn't inherit the theme setting stuff. So remember we just talked about the theme settings.php file. Doesn't inherit that.
Well, it does inherit theme settings.php, but it doesn't inherit any settings you configured in the base.
Excellent. Don't be naughty. In Drupal, this is like Drupal root, right? You download Drupal from Drupal.org, you open up the directory, this is what you need, you put that in your root directory for your site, and you look at it and you go, how do I do a theme? I know what I do. I go to the themes directory because that would make sense, right? But no, do not do. You go to sites, all themes. So sites just sort of indicates to you that like, hey, you can have maybe multiple sites running off this thing. You probably shouldn't do that, but at least not right at front. But basically what we're saying here is the sites directory is where we do things that are specific to our website. If you mess with the themes that are inside of here, those are the ones that you see automatically when you install Drupal. You get those Bartik and all those kinds of things. Garland. Those themes are available to you right out of the box, and you can totally use those. But do not go in here and edit those, and do not go in here and put your own themes inside of here. It will cause confusion. It is technically hacking, what they call hacking core of Drupal, and there are lots of terrible little sayings around "don't hack core" that people say all the time that are offensive, and don't do it. So let's kind of take a look real quick at kind of how these template files might work, right? And you can kind of see some of this. Maybe you can't kind of see some of this, but basically you can see here that we've got an HTML, and I'm just going to talk a little bit kind of about how the structure sort of works, and those arrows are indicating something. But basically the way Drupal sort of out of the box sort of does its templating, and it's got this thing called the HTML TPL.php, and you can override the way this is being output right here by putting a file called HTML.php in your template or in your theme, and it will override what this is outputting. This is the base one that Drupal just gives you. And even they tell you how to override it. Right up here in all these comments, it's telling you here's all the variables that are in here that you can use, and you can mess with these if you want, right? And so basically that's what's going on here. But you can see here it says PHP print page. That's printing the output from this. That's being loaded up with variables. This page outputs something called content. Inside that content, there's nodes, right, that are being loaded. And the nodes are being formatted and output based upon this node template. So you can see how they start to kind of fit within each other here. And there's other templates. This is just sort of an example of the sort of top ones. And you can override these like quite easily, right? So say we had an article, right? And we want to modify how articles get output, right? That are nodes that are articles. Simple. Node -- article, the name of whatever the content type is that you're trying to override, .tpl.php, put that in your theme file, or your theme directory, and bingo, you're overriding the node output whenever you're hitting an article. Pretty fancy. So that's getting specific with it, and you can get super specific. Now these are sort of fancy ones, right? Because we're getting into messing around views, lists of things like that. But you can really mess around with some of this stuff and get deep in there. And I'll show you in a second kind of how you can figure out, well, that's nice, but how would I know what I'm supposed to name this thing, right? Like how do I figure that out? I'll show you in a minute. Changing template variables. So you saw those variables being output there, and those variables existed, right? What if we want to add more? Like if we have something that's like, yeah, we kind of want to mess with that, or we have a special thing we want to just pop in there. Or if we just want to modify the one that's being output, which is more than likely the case. And you have to be careful about what you're trying to plop in, right? We're not trying to add a bunch of functionality into our template.php file. That would be a big no-no. And functionality comes from modules generally, right? So we're not trying to modify functionality here. We're just trying to modify some of the output that's getting stuck into our templates. And we do that with the template.php file in our theme directory. And inside there, you have the ability to use these things called preprocess and process functions. And you can see it's just some fairly simple PHP sort of. And you get that variable, and that gets passed through, and you can start modifying stuff that's inside there in that variable, and then you can start to use that. Those variables show up in that template as something you can use. So you can mess with all that. Theme functions. So Drupal has a little extra added complexity when it comes to this kind of stuff, because sometimes they didn't use one of these tpl.php files in order to give us our HTML output with nice, easy variables to like look at and see what's going on inside that. So what they did was they put some of that HTML output inside of a function, theme function. Now we got to go in and mess around with that. So we have the ability to do it. You probably don't want to, because it can be daunting. But you can find the theme function that is creating that output And you can override that and change it. You can change how the HTML is being output from that function. In true sort of open source fashion, right? Somebody comes along and says, I don't like this, right? I don't like having to do this because why are we doing this, right? So these are going away for the most part in Drupal 8. The variable array varies heavily. That's why it's called variable. So that variable array that gets passed through, and we're not going to get, again, you can spend a lot of time just talking about pre-process functions. But basically, this variable array changes based upon the kind of thing that you are trying to pre-process. So what happens with these things is, while this is a nice one, because this is just kind of like pre-processing everything, what you can do is you can say, so drop would be like the name of our theme that we're doing. We could say we created a theme called drop theme. So we drop, pre-process, and we could do underscore node. And now we're just looking at the variables that are being passed into that node template, or the page template, or the HTML, by just putting that underscore, whatever the name of that thing is. And it sort of knows that naming convention and works with that. It's magic. Not really, it's science. But basically, renderable arrays are also something that exists. They are a bit confusing. We'll talk briefly about those, but basically it's a way for there to be just sort of an array of stuff that can tell Drupal, hey, when you put this render function in front of this stuff right here, I'm going to tell you here's all the data that you need, and here's how I want you to style it by just giving a theme function name, just a theme name, like a list, right? And here's the data for that list, and plop out a list, right? So it's a way to kind of quickly get some renderable stuff. Preprocess functions, again, talk about this to set up the variables in TPL PHP files. The way you sort of name them is it's like your module name. You can do this in modules, or you can do this in a theme. So your theme name, preprocess, theme function name, node is one of those. You get the variables. Boom, we talked about that. Process functions, there's a little confusion around these. You're generally just going to mess with preprocess functions. Process functions, are sort of another pass at the variables before they're stuck into the template file. Again, let's not get too deep in this because we're not doing a full-on seminar on this or a training on this. We can do that later for sure. But basically, say in the pre-process part, we went in and we messed around with the array and we gave it an array of here's class names that we want to have added, to this class variable that's being output in the template. Here, I'm going to flatten that down into a string. So it's just kind of a way to sort of break these things up a little bit. May or may not be necessary all the time. So just know they exist, and there's kind of a way to split up your stuff. Theme function overrides. We kind of talked about these. Again, sometimes, menu link, right? There's a thing called theme menu link, and this particular theme is called Super 7, but the function we're talking about here is called theme menu link, and this is a way to output menu links, right? So we're going to modify how that gets output, right? A little bit by messing around with the class, right? So the only way we could do this in this case was to modify how that theme function worked, right? Because it wasn't really exposed to us in the other ways. So that's a fairly simple demonstration of, or a example of that, but it can get a little bit more complicated if the function is doing a lot more, and you will find places where that happens. So like lists, for example, like LIs, where you're just saying here's the thing, and dump stuff out. Well, they had to put some HTML in there, and so to make those happen. And so if you want to mess around with that, that's how you can do it. I'm just trying to point out to you that you have a lot of ability to go and really mess with all this stuff. And we're just in the theme layer. We're not messing around at all with like installing modules, creating custom modules, doing a whole bunch of site building work, trying to figure out Drupal's crazy, menu structure and all that kind of stuff. Not that it's all that crazy, but it's, sometimes a little bit like, what do I do? Arrays. Arrays, you see this, you're going to see this a lot. Some of you folks might be a little intimidated, right? Because we're seeing code, right? Like, this is PHP code. Oh, my goodness. But arrays are just a structure, you know what I mean? And you can kind of see, like, it's just a way to kind of structure this stuff and keep it nested and all that kind of stuff. And these things can get big in Drupal. You know, look at one of these arrays sometimes and it's like, wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. But it's basically just giving you a lot of flexibility, a way to go in and really do that kind of stuff. Sometimes nested in some of these arrays, you'll find objects, right? And you go, oh no, what's an object? Well, you know, an object is just a different way of structuring stuff in PHP. I mean, I'm simplifying that a lot. But basically, the way you know if you're looking at an object versus an array is, well, arrays have these little brackets and stuff around them, right? Or they'll say array. But if there's an object in there, you'll see a thing that says like node, $node, and it'll have one of these little arrow things, and then some, you know, other text of whatever the variable is that you're trying to call out. All it's just saying is, give me this thing from a node object, which is just a structure of, yeah. Render and renderable arrays, we kind of talked about that. Provides the structured data. This is sort of an example of one here, right? Where we're saying like, here's a thing called content, which has my data, and has this system name, it has another block, and these are the arrays of that data that are all deep down in here. Well, what I'm telling you also is how to theme that data. So I'm passing in like, say, hey, make this thing a page. It's a type of page, and theme it that way. And we could change which one of those themes happen. So we can mess around with that, change how things get rendered. So you can hint to Drupal's theme layer, hey, render things like this instead. So it's a way to kind of play with the rendering of stuff. And it's just another way to kind of get a lot of stuff themed out and plopped out into your Drupal theme. You know, again, we'll take some time. Be patient with these things, you know, when you're messing around with them, because, you know, there's a lot there. And then ask, you know, ask other Drupal people. They will help you. No problem. So we talked about like, hey, how do we name these things, right? We're trying to name stuff. And so name these template files. Well, we can actually get some debugging, right? So you just go into the settings. There's a settings.php file for Drupal. You set this thing to debug to true. And then now inside of your HTML output, when you go look at the page or look at the block and stuff like that, you'll see this thing is outputting file name suggestions for you. So it's outputting that, so it tells you how you can override this stuff. So that's kind of a cool thing. Best practices. There are best practices around doing this kind of stuff. And so basically, you're doing it wrong if you're changing the core themes. We talked about that later. Remember, no and the arrow. Too much functional PHP inside your tpl.php file. If you're doing all kinds of loops and crazy stuff all inside of your your tpl.php file, stop. That needs to probably either go into your template.php, or there's something really special that you're trying to do that probably belongs in another place, like a module. Too much functional PHP or SQL queries in the template.php module. Please, no SQL queries. No, we're not doing queries here. Now, you're doing it wrong. This is like, you should be fired. So basically, like SQL queries in a tpl.php file. Fired. And just, you know, getting crazy amounts of JavaScript, doing tons of just, it's like, you know, you're doing a Node.js, you know, crazy business all inside. No, don't do that. Come on. Be serious. Panels. An easy way to change page layouts. And so we're making this easy for you anyways, because we're going to give you panels out of the box, because this is awesome. Like, come on. I just want to change my layout and like get a bunch of different regions and plop stuff all over the place, and then later go back, change it again. Easily just like pick and choose which things go into which other places. Panels, it's awesome. Also, right out of the box, if you just installed basic panels, you would not necessarily have responsive layouts, but with the Panoply distribution and the stuff we're building, totally responsive. Contribution, collaboration, super important to doing Drupal stuff. It's broken. This isn't perfect. The thing I need doesn't exist, right? All that kind of stuff. You can contribute. You can participate. You have the ability to change it. It's cool to complain. That's fine. Right, and it happens a lot, right? But if you're helping, right, and you say, well, this is wrong, but I have an idea of how to fix it, or at least I have a theory about how to fix it. Does anybody else think that this can be fixed in this way? Then you can change how Drupal does stuff. And so this is part of not only what happens on Drupal.org with Drupal core and with all of the contributed modules that you find on Drupal.org and all of the themes that you find on Drupal.org, but this is a process that we like to have in our department as well. So, we'll be letting you know how you can contribute and collaborate with us and help, in making things better. And so they're on Drupal.org. If you go to the modules or if you go to core, you'll see that there's these things on the right-hand sidebar called issue queues, issues. This thing has issues. And so you can go in there and you can see where other people have posted like, hey, this is broken. Hey, this needs to be fixed. That kind of stuff. See if somebody else has already brought it up, and if there's already work happening, or there's already maybe a patch that fixes it that you can apply to your stuff. Or you can go in and you can start your own issue and say, hey, I've got issues. But you can do it. You can get involved, which is awesome. The future, Drupal 8. Drupal 8 is changing how it does theming. It uses a different template engine called Twig. It comes from the Symfony PHP framework, if anybody's ever heard of that. If you go to all you have to do is Google Twig. It won't show you, well, if you go to the images, it probably shows you a bunch of pictures of sticks. But if you look at Sensio Labs, you'll find Twig. It's pretty high up in the ranking. And it kind of gives you an idea of what goes on there as far as that. So basically, it uses this sort of like mustaches style, syntax to it to output its variables. And there's even ways to do loops and all of that kind of stuff. There are no or maybe less theme functions. Again, some of this is still being worked on. I think they almost crushed all of the theme functions by now. Pretty sure. No PHP in the template files. In fact, if you put PHP in the template files, it won't run. So guess what? You can't get fired, which is rad. So you can just put all the PHP you want. It'll never run. You never get in trouble. It has semantic HTML5. It's responsive right out of the box. So, Drupal 8, you'll install it. Boom, you got responsive stuff happening. Even on the administrative side of things, which is part of what we're doing in our stuff too, is we've made our administrative stuff, responsive, which is nice. So you can do all of this in Drupal 7, right? And just really through the theme layer is where all the magic happens. It's just that right out of the box, plain vanilla Drupal is going to have that, including like a million other cool things. But then there's also another kind of future that a lot of people have been talking about called headless Drupal. Which is basically sort of decoupling the theme layer completely, not even really using it for your site, just not using it, and using Drupal more as a JSON style RESTful server. And so you can build a front end using things like Node.js and all these cool JavaScript sort of front end kind of things, and use that for your front end. Use Drupal as sort of the content manager and the RESTful server to create the data that your cool little JavaScript app is using. So that's another sort of approach to doing Drupal theming. That's not really theming anymore. That's sort of putting a fancy front end all together in front of that. So, and by the way, that headless thing, it can be done right now, Drupal 7. There's some cool modules that just can make that happen. So, thank you. If there's any questions, comments, things you want to throw in.
A lot of information.
What's that?
There's a lot of information.
Yeah, sorry, was that too much?
No.
Looks
awesome.
References and attributions. I don't know if you want me to put my slides in.
You can just send them to me, and I'll send them out.
Awesome.
Carson, I want awesome sauce now. How do I get it?
Well, with your help, your help. Yeah, we can get there. So actually, you can get some awesome sauce, a taste of awesome sauce. Just contact Sean.
A sprinkle.
A sprinkle of awesome sauce. And you can get a Pantheon account. If you don't have a Pantheon account, we can get you one of those. And then we have a thing called UCD drops, which is what our current distribution is called. And it will actually give you a UC Davis, theme right out of the box. And it has a lot of modules and things like that that you can go in and play with, and some function, some features that sort of exist and are kind of set up already, but not to the level that we're doing it with Sitefarm. Sitefarm is taking that sort of to the next level for sure. But you can totally start playing around with that stuff and get yourself a way to actually just spin up sites for free. Is it okay to do this, Sean? Yeah. So you can totally do that, but just contact what's your notice? Just contact webservices@ucdavis.edu. So just it's all one word, and we can get you a Pantheon account set up. And what Pantheon is basically a sort of hosting environment for Drupal stuff. It's a very powerful, very Drupal specific stack of things, as well as a really great development environment. It has like a dev, test, and live environment for you to be able to control, doing development type stuff, putting stuff into test, and then launching it in live. Now, your site that you can get from us, the things you can do for free, you can totally just launch a site, get it on there, go as far as putting it into test, but you can't actually take it live. As soon as you want to hey, I want to make this live on, on the internet and give it a domain name and all that kind of stuff, you have to pay. So just so you know that. But if you want to mess around, totally cool to do that. And by being a UC Davis person using sort of our version of Pantheon, not the generic version of Pantheon, we have a special one, you get access to the UC drop. So what happens is you go in there, you say, I want to start a new site. If you guys don't mind, if you don't mind me taking 3-4 extra minutes, I can show you exactly how it works. Or if you don't want to watch this, bye.
Yeah.
So let's do this.
So I'm very non-technical when it comes to these sorts of things, and I built the site without any help. So that's how easy it is, even before the Sitefarm is out.
So that's really great to hear, actually. So for instance, I'm logged into, oh, you can't see this. Yeah. It's cool. So I'm logged into Pantheon here. Here you can see all the sites that are part of my dashboard, sites that I work on. And so what happens is I've got an account on here. I say, oh, I want to create a new site. So I click I'm creating a new site. And then you can say, oh, name your site, right? And we're with the University of California, Davis. Make sure you pick that. Don't say none. Pick that, because that's going to expose you to even more awesome sauce. No, there's already awesome sauce. Sorry. There's awesome sauce 2015, man. There's just too much awesome sauce. There's too much sauce. Cool. So, so it's creating my site, right? What's my start state? You can start from scratch. You can import something that's already Drupal. You can start WordPress if you want to. Don't. But what you want to do here is you want to start with an organization distribution, UCD Drupal 7, and this is a thing we're calling. Doesn't say drops there. I thought
I can't get them to change the name. I wish it didn't say development preview.
So now it's saying, okay, I'll go ahead and what's that? Yeah, reticulating splines, warming up the processors. They've got a sense of humor.
Your power's flexing.
So basically, what's happening is they're spinning up servers and stuff for us to host this thing on, or more particularly, they're spinning up containers, which is part of the sort of cool part of what goes on behind Pantheon. And so it's analyzing my code now. So basically what it's doing is it's getting all this installation set up and ready to go for us, and starting with the code from the distribution that we manage. And so we manage this distribution's code as well. So we apply for all of the modules that are in there. We apply all of the security patches that would come out. And yes, Drupal will have security patches. Some more serious than others. Some extremely serious that need to be done. But this system right here has saved us so much on being able to do that. That's super efficient for us to get that kind of work done. So it's awesome. But it's important to keep your site maintained, and that's with anything, Drupal or not. So my site's ready. I visit my Pantheon dashboard, and this is the dashboard for my website. And you can see there's my initial commit that happened, and this is all running from Git, 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 the version control software. And so go visit my site. Here's my installation. I want to use the UCD drops installation profile, right? It's the special one that we want to do. We only have to install 60 Vim modules, not too shabby. SciFarm's already got 100 now.
Now we can use your distribution off of Pantheon, right? We don't have to be on Pantheon to use the UCD drops.
It would be best if you did.
Right.
But yes, once you have this code, if you have one of these, Pantheon accounts, yeah, you could sync up the Git repository, pull it down. It would give you all of the code for your site. You'd be able to download the database. You can see if you go back to the dashboard. If you look at workflow and you go to export, you can do an export of the database. You can do an export of the files. And so that'll give you that download. Now, that being said, Pantheon does run a sort of optimized version of Drupal 7. And so there are some things about that version of Drupal 7 that are slightly different to work with fancy caching layers like Varnish a little better and things like that, and Redis, things like that to make, it's called PressFlow Drupal. So, but they are essentially at this point the maintainers of PressFlow Drupal, Pantheon, and their entire business is based on that code base. So they keep it super up to date.
Cal, why would you want to extract from Pantheon?
Well, if I'm thinking if I'm like hosting Drupal on something else, can I still use UCD drops?
You can use drops, but here's what's going to happen. As soon as there's a new update that comes from the drops upstream, so whenever we apply our updates to that, you're not going to get those updates. You're out of the loop now, right?
Or the security patch.
Right.
Well, so Grad Studies is actually doing this on one or two of their sites. And
You mean off of Pantheon? Not on Pantheon?
Right,
Not on
on Pantheon. We initially built it on Pantheon, and then they pulled it off. And so what we did was we synced to our Git repo on Bitbucket. So they're not going to get scheduled updates, but if
they have to check.
They have to go check the repo.
Updates come out, they need to know to go and do a Git pull from.
And so, did any of you hear of a thing called Drupal getting? Anybody hear that? If you're following Drupal, right? Oh no, this guy's following.
7 hours.
Oh, 7 hours is all you have before your site gets hacked. And Well, first of all, everybody who was on this platform that we were managing, within 2 hours, right? And by the way, before you even needed to do that, Pantheon had already applied some updates to its entire system that made it so that pretty much the easiest way to hack into that thing was thwarted, and there's no way you're going to get hacked. None of the sites that we were managing, zero, got hacked that were on Pantheon. None. Part of that's a matter of that this system is freaking awesome at that. Part of it is that their organization participates in open source, and they have people who are on the security team for Drupal. So they knew this change was coming long before it ever was announced that was coming. So they had their system prepared and ready to go. There's another vendor called Acquia. They did the exact same thing. They have people who participate from their organization in that. And so the update came super quick. They had ways of, even if you didn't apply the update, you were still fine. And then also our team is pretty freaking awesome. So we hopped right on this. We paid attention to this. We knew when, hey, this sounds pretty bad. Let's make sure we got all hands on deck and make sure that this all gets applied properly and everything happens. Unfortunately, for those folks who weren't being managed by us, could have been one of the ones he mentioned earlier.
They didn't know if they got hacked, but they
Didn't
had
know.
to do a complete system restore
Right.
just in case.
Who was that again?
Right. That's not awesome. Yeah.
And
You
why
know
did they
what?
choose to not just host it in Pentagon?
Because they had like
Cal,
7
to speak to your specific
Right.
sort of thing. I think
And
that
so they
might be
didn't
a
want to
little
pay
bit.
the $25.
I don't know if
Because
I don't know if
after,
Tom came and talked to you about that.
yeah,
All about
well, I'm
it.
going to talk to him after this.
Cool. Ask him about the Acquia
Yeah.
presentation and kind of what's there.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a little bit more applicable to the kind of things you guys are doing
Right.
rather than the Pantheon setup.
Right.
So
Yeah, our Pantheon hosting is 100% recharge funded.
Yeah.
So
and the thing that
In some-
Sitefarm lives on could potentially not.
well, yeah, we don't know what that's going to end up.
It won't be a
being in the
recharge.
future. But right now, what's that?
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. But that's one of the reasons that that they went and threw it somewhere else, because they had a couple little tiny sites that really didn't matter. They had a handful of pages, and they didn't want to spend the money to host it on Pantheon. They weren't updating it anyway. Well,
Yeah.
was that worth it? I don't know. Maybe.
And initially it was 4 sites. They had 4 sites that had almost no traffic.
Right.
They technically needed those sites up. And so do they want to pay $25 a month for each?
$50 a month.
Oh,
50.
Okay. So for 4 sites that get.
That starts adding.
traffic.
Yeah, Pantheon is not extremely cheap, but if your site is important to you and your business, then
Yeah.
really that's not that expensive.
It's not bad.
Right?
It's not bad. And
So, but Gracie's main site is on.
Right, main site is on Pantheon.
Cool.
so anyway, just to finish up our little demo here, I entered in my site information here. I click Save and Continue. It's going to go ahead and finish up doing its installation, and then it's going to plop me right into, hey, welcome to your site. So I'm going to go here, visit my new site, and look, it looks like a UC Davis website, with a really stupid title. But anyways, you can go in here and you can see you've got all the cool stuff, but we've got extra things, right? We've got features. So you've got some of these UC Davis features. Some of them are turned off already, but you can see there's project portfolio with an image gallery. There's a slideshow to put one of those wacky slideshows on your front page, which you don't need. And then some base stuff that kind of helps some of those other ones. But you can go in and you can actually turn on some of these other things, implementations of CAS, if you want to use CAS for login and stuff like that. So we've got that here as well. We have views installed here by default. Views is a way to make lists of things. You can make very complicated and fancy lists with those things. You can go in and start creating content types. Say I have a special content type, it's special. And so it's got a title field, and I'm going to save and add fields. And so I can come in here and I can start putting special fields in here. So say I want an image on this one. Right? Do this. Save. That's hard to do this one. Yep, looks good. Save. You can get into all these settings around this particular thing. You can limit the amount of file extensions, different kind of uploads. This is just field stuff. And so now, when I want to add content, I have a new content type called special.
That's cool.
Now I can go in here and start doing titles, bodies, all this kind of stuff. Here's my image field that I put in there, right? So I can pick a particular, image, save it. Oops, can't give the title, required field. You can set up whether these fields are required or not. Boom, there's my thing, right? And the panel stuff is in here, and a thing called Panelizer, Panels IP, all those kinds of things. All the cool fancy stuff is here. It takes a little bit of piecing together on your part to get it working as smoothly as we will have it working for you in Siteform. But all there. And with this kind of setup, you have a little bit more control over what's going on with the site as well. So you can actually go in and start to add more modules, do things like that if you Super.
We mostly built this as a start state for us.
This is a start state for
We're building
developers.
really custom sites. It was never really meant as a, oh, you're just an editor, you don't know anything about Drupal, and you want to create a whole website, a straight up UCD website from, in a box. That was not really what we were trying to do here. That's what we're trying to do with
The
site farm.
site farm.
That's going to be, hopefully, the theory is we're going to get that